and welcome to Awakening Through Love, the podcast. My name's Rod Gordon.
And my name's Martina Hughes. And that's right, today's topic, that's with me. So today's...
Only because I will forget.
That's good. Today's topic is man's relationship to freedom. Now, this has been coming up in a few client sessions recently with couples I'm working with. And so we wanted to dive in, particularly so that Rod can speak to man's relationship to freedom, because I can speak to it from the outside as an observer, but not from the inside, obviously. So we're going to look at man's relationship to freedom, but also how that shows up in the relationship around timing, commitments, planning things to happen, household things. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, Rod, would you like to talk about your relationship to freedom?
Yeah, that's a fairly wide question. Anything specific? I'm not sure where to begin.
Why is freedom so important for you as a man? Can you?
Yeah, it's not like intentionally important.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an impulse that resides within that desires to make its way externally.
Mm-hmm.
Desires to get out.
And does it feel like almost like a continual quest for freedom that kind of runs in the background or sometimes the foreground of a man's life?
I think initially it does, yeah.
Mm.
It's a desire.
Mm.
So there's this desire. It's it's interesting because it's not necessarily for freedom, although that's how it appears. But I think what's slightly deeper than that for me is it's the breaking free of a perceived constraint.
Mm-hmm.
And so the result of that breaking free is the sense of freedom,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more the breaking free that actually
Mm.
feels like the desire is
Mm-hmm.
to break out, to break
Yes.
free of something that I perceive that's holding me back, trapping, constraining in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a deep impulse in there to do that, and in some ways too, like that experience feels like love,
Mm.
freedom for me in my nervous system. So one of the things that we explore in our work is like how a man's nervous system processes life's experiences and versus how a woman's nervous system processes life experiences. They're not the same. They're very different, and we have different lenses that we experience the world through.
Mm.
And so freedom for me, a part of that feeling of being free feels like love.
Mm.
It feels like home. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like a natural or desired state of being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if I was to make a comparison to a woman's experience, I guess as a woman, the lifelong quest is for love. It's
Mm.
like that relentless, constant kind of seeking of love,
Yeah.
only to realize it's inside. It's a little
True.
bit of a fool's quest in some ways.
No difference to freedom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the the initial search for freedom, in my experience came through like a desire for purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where am I going? What am I doing? Who am I being? What am I creating? How am I going to get there?
Mm-hmm.
These kind of inquiries, and it starts out really quite young. And so at first there's a sense that if I fulfill my purpose, then I'll be free.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sits like I didn't know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I know that now. But when I say I don't know if I know it, like in my head I do, but can I live it?
Mm-hmm.
Not all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
I fail at that. So there's this desire initially that, if I follow my purpose, if I live the life I'm meant to, that I'll fundamentally feel free.
Mm-hmm.
And so it begins there.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to something really specific. I think on a spiritual level, the deepest, like the impulse for freedom is, the life expression or the mirror of consciousness is desire for liberation from the constraint of being in the body.
Mm,
So it's the liberation to live an awakened life or to be enlightened. I think
mhm,
is the
mhm.
deepest impulse of it is
Yes.
is what drives it. Deep in the background that we can't sense or feel, but there's a sense of a desire for liberation.
Mm,
And so at first there's this sense that if I push and strive and work hard enough that somehow I'll be free. And I sorted out like financially. It's like if I work hard enough and make enough money, I'll be free of the burden of worry of my
mm,
bills, of worrying will I be safe? Can I live in the world? Can I provide for a family? Like
mhm.
all these types of things. And so, as a young man, I set out in hot pursuit of that. Given I had ADHD and all these other things, I was like hyperactive, disconnected, super intense.
Mhm,
I was
mhm.
still intense.
Energy to burn, so it's like, I'll go for that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I was just all in on whatever I was doing.
Mm.
And in lots of ways, what I did is created different constraints because then all of a sudden I'm working really hard.
Mhm,
Now I have to be at work.
mhm,
I
mhm.
have all these things I have to fulfill, these obligations, these things I said I'd do. So now I feel trapped again. And I'm back in that cycle of like, I need to break free of this. And so it's a relentless hot pursuit is what I was
Mm,
in. And
mhm,
then at the same time as I was in this hot pursuit of this freedom, I was constantly trapping myself with the next thing. The next
mm,
belief
mhm,
was actually the next thing I really needed to liberate myself from that
mm.
I was creating. So the and as I got older, it didn't change. Once I started this work and I started to meditate, I became aware of the freedom driven heart of a man, and I became aware that freedom, there was nothing that I could seek externally
Mhm,
that was going to feel like freedom. There was no amount of financial freedom that I was going to feel free. There was no amount of political freedom or any of the freedoms that I sought in life. Like if I had this car, then I'll be happy and I'll be free. If I have
mhm,
this
mhm,
motorbike, I'll be happy, I'll be free. If I surf the perfect wave, I'll be happy and I'll be free. And like at times it feels like that, like to
mm,
go for a surf and to be in the ocean. And especially if there's not many people out, there's this sense of like spaciousness.
mm,
There's no pressure on my body or nervous system. Like I'm not fighting for another wave or anything like this. And so there's this sense of freedom that exists momentarily and the beauty of like gliding down the face of a wave, feeling totally free in that
mm.
moment. And then that wave finishes. And then it's like, oh, now I've got to paddle all the way back out and see if I can fight someone for another wave. It's like,
I'm free. I'm on the wave. Oh, now I'm struggling again.
exactly. It's straight back into it. And
Mm,
it kind of, you know, these experiences started to point to me that there was nothing I was going to do to find the liberation I was seeking or that sensation of freedom that would actually last
mm,
externally.
mhm,
And so when I started down this path and I got told to meditate, like having ADHD, it's like torture. It's like my my brain is like a circus monkey on speed. It's doing backflips and spinning around and thinking of things at 100 miles an hour. So sitting down and being still was like a form of torture.
mm,
And so I did it because I said I would. But in some ways, like if someone had told me to meditate for ADHD, I wouldn't have
mm.
because I would like, that's just dumb. You
Mm,
did
mm.
obviously got no idea what's happening inside here. and and so anyway, I did, and then everything started to slow down. And what I noticed when I meditated was that I started to feel spaciousness inside my body. So then there was a sense of freedom started to come online internally. That was very different because it
Mm,
it lasts longer. It's something I can carry with me throughout the day.
mhm,
If I meditate and there's challenging situations in life, there's a sense of that there's space for me to think and feel and respond and
mhm,
create something beautiful from those challenges. They're not so much obstacles or moments to overcome, as the challenges are opportunities to explore. So
Mm.
they feel different in their texture.
Mhm.
And so I continued, down that path of meditation and learning to create space internally. And in lots of ways, it highlighted to me the futility of trying to trying to find freedom externally.
Mm.
What I started to notice was um, this desire for freedom that was inside of me and how it wanted to play out. It was really interesting because, one of the things I loved to do was to go motorbike riding.
Mhm.
And so I would always be the one organizing rides. So originally, like I was like messaging however many people to organize it. Eventually, I created like a group. And so, anyway, I would organize a ride for the weekend and say it was on a Sunday. It's usually on a Sunday. So, because I had Sunday, Monday off. So, get to Friday or Saturday and I'd start to feel this pressure. Like, I'd be working, got work Friday, work Saturday. I was like, oh God, I've got to go for a ride on the weekend. I said I'd go and meet the guys and I've got to do this. And it's like, I've got to get the bikes organized and I need fuel and I need to check oil. I need to do this. I need to get my gear clean. Like, oh, all of a sudden there's this pressure.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God, I feel trapped.
Mm.
And even though I was the one that organized it,
Mhm.
doing the thing that I wanted to do that I absolutely loved,
Mhm.
I still felt trapped.
Mm.
It was really incredible sort of moment to
Mm.
catch that, because quite often it was really easy for me to recognize, say you being my partner or previous partners, like when they wanted something from me, oh my God, the feeling of being trapped and the pressure in my nervous system was overwhelming. It was
Mm.
like, oh my God, why won't she just leave me alone?
Mhm.
This kind of feeling,
Mm.
or those kinds of thoughts, beliefs would come up that, I believe that my partner's wants or desires were trapping me
Mm.
in some way. And that's how I perceived it,
Mm.
because that's how I experienced it. So it
Mm.
seemed real to me. But then when I started to notice that the things I loved and wanted to do, I still felt trapped. I
Mm.
was like, wow, like how do I reconcile that paradox? If I organize to do something I love, then I'll feel trapped.
Mm.
No matter how good the thing is, just the fact that I have an obligation by sort of Friday. I'm saying if my week was particularly bad, it would be different. I'd be looking forward to it because
Mhm.
the pressure of work or whatever else was in my life was more trapping than
Mhm.
the thing that I'd organized.
Mm.
But as that pressure started to dial back, and that's when we were together, you didn't put a lot of pressure on me
Mm.
in life, which I'm grateful for. And we don't need to explore that. But as that pressure dialed back, it revealed that
Mm.
this was actually true internally of myself as well. But I couldn't see that while I was, blaming others or
Mm.
judging them as creating this experience. It was only when that pressure was relieved that I noticed it was still there.
Mm. Can I just ask, is it the commitment to a time or is it the sense of having to do something or is it both?
Both,
Mm.
without a doubt. Like
Mm.
the commitment to a time, that's definitely,
Mhm.
has that feeling. But really it's like how this feeling of being, I use the word trapped. It's really, that doesn't capture it for everyone.
Mhm.
Just want to acknowledge that. Um, it's just a word that I've learned to associate with the experience, but it actually, in the nervous system, in my body, it actually feels like pressure.
Mm. Mhm.
So it's like when there's pressure pushing in,
Mhm.
then there's a desire to break free from that constraint. And so
Mm.
that in a way feels like trapped. Trapped doesn't capture it
Mm.
probably as well as pressure, but it's
Yes.
it's like an internal pressure that
Mhm.
comes online, and that the pressure of that experience feels like I want to break free of it. Like I want it gone. I want it to end in some way.
Mm.
And so what I realized was that that was never going to end,
Mm.
that
Mhm.
cycle.
Mhm.
And so I started to accept that of
Mhm.
like, every time I want to do something, I'm going to feel trapped. I'm going
Mm.
to feel this internal pressure. And I realized it wasn't something to fix, as much as to realize it was something that I had to become aware of, that that's how I experience life.
Mm-hmm.
When there's something that I have to do or that I want to do or that I've organized to do, I will always feel some kind of pressure
Mm-hmm.
in my nervous system. And I'll naturally want to break free of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that feeling, that impulse in my body, when I believed it and I thought I needed it, I have to have it, I have to break free. There's this almost like a panic that comes online,
Mm-hmm.
a fear of like, I won't be okay, I'm going to die. Like it's this, like the thought I'm going to die doesn't come up,
Mm-hmm.
but my body responds as if I was going to die.
So it's like the body goes into a fight or flight
Fight or flight.
reaction
Yeah.
in response to the pressure.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so like, there's no thought that I'm going to die because
Mm.
that's just like doesn't make sense.
Mm.
It's in
Mm-hmm.
some ways that would be irrational, but
Mm.
feelings aren't rational.
Mm.
So feelings pop up whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that that feeling, once I started to accept that it was just that's how I was going to experience life,
Mm-hmm.
that dialed back the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Now there wasn't so much a pressure because I was no longer resisting what is,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the experience through my body of life,
Mm-hmm.
of having an obligation, saying yes to something. Because I know during periods of time where I had created like, freedom, like I was, if I was going to be a go with the flow kind of guy,
Mm-hmm.
then in those periods of time where I was like considered myself free, like I'd made no obligations, I'd end up sitting around doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the weekend, I'd be like guilting, shaming myself, like, oh, you did nothing, you didn't get anything done. You're like, you're useless. Like all these kinds of things would come
Whole
up.
other kind of pressure, right?
And I'm trapped again. So even if I created the freedom, I felt like in somehow I'd fundamentally failed life as a man because I didn't achieve something. I didn't do
Mm.
something. I didn't experience anything. Like
Mm.
it was just nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it wasn't a good nothing. It felt like a failure of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this real sense of like lose lose.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
As like if I was damned if I did and I was damned if I didn't. And so allowing that to be as it was, just and what I mean by that is just accepting it, going,
Mm.
okay, so if I sit around and do nothing all weekend, I'm gonna feel like crap. If I create all these obligations and things, I'm gonna feel like crap.
Mm.
And that's just how it is. And I was
Mm.
like, yeah, rightio. Well, that's workable at least.
Mm.
So then I didn't just ignore it when it came up. I'd notice it and go, yeah, okay, yeah, I feel trapped because I organized, to go and do this. Like, is that true? Like, do I really believe that I'm trapped? And it's like, no, I want to go and see the guys. I want to catch up with them because I know I'm going to have a ball.
Mm.
And it was like, yeah, right. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of added, you know, inquiry to
Mm.
the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what I would do, if I had a weekend coming up where I didn't have something planned, I thought, okay, well, let's do that. And then, I'd sort of check in. I was like, let's just do nothing until lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
Check in at lunchtime. How am I feeling? I actually feel pretty good. What do I want to do? Do I want to stay and do nothing or do I want to go and do something? It's like, I know I'm going to regret doing nothing. So I might go and just do something.
Mm-hmm.
So do something small, something that I wanted to achieve. Maybe it was like mow the lawns or clean the house or do something like, and I'd go and do something where there was some sense of achievement and come back to doing nothing. And then I started to create a relationship with my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than just, at first I felt more like a victim to
Mm-hmm.
my experience that I'm trapped if I do this and I'm trapped if I don't do this and I'm trapped if I do that and blah, blah, blah. But then what I started to realize was that I could relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, yeah, I would do nothing for the whole weekend. And I'd be like, yeah, I know that guilt and stories are going to come up. And I also know they're not true. My body needs rest. So we're resting this weekend. We're doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it became more intentional. And I was relating, to this experience that was arising of feeling trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And so, other times, sometimes, I would just sit there and feel it. Just
Mm-hmm.
what is this feeling and just like be with it and allow the sensations to be there. But the one thing I know for sure is that it wasn't going to go away,
Mm.
and that, ignoring it didn't work. Um, Going along with the story didn't work, but acceptance and inquiry,
Mm.
they were the keys to kind of dancing with the experience,
Mm.
and to allow my life to open up, to recognize that that's like, for me, that's how it feels to make a plan. That's
Mhm.
how it feels to not have a plan. This is how it feels to relate to that
Yes.
situation. And just accepting that that wasn't something to fix, it was something to learn to feel and
Mm.
accept.
Yes.
And once I did that, then I was in relationship with the experience
Mhm.
rather than in resistance to the experience. When I was in resistance to the experience and I was fighting that feeling and trying to reconcile things externally by changing what I was doing or how I was doing it, in that resistance or that fighting the experience, I'm really fighting reality.
Mm.
And so arguing with reality
Mm.
means I lose every time because
Mhm.
reality is whatever reality is.
Mhm.
And so in that acceptance, there was this reconciliation of the experience around
Mm.
freedom
Mhm.
and just a relationship that sort of opened up to it.
Mm.
And that became for me the pathway forward. It
Mm.
wasn't something to fix or change. It was something to learn to understand and relate to.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great description of your journey from the beginning to then the realization, the understanding where you've come to now. And
Mm,
it feels that there's so many gifts and so much medicine in what you've just described for men. And it might require a little further breaking down, and we can jump into that. I just also wanted to, there's a few different scenarios of men that basically we see in society. There's the young man who doesn't want to commit to a relationship,
mm,
and then there's the man who gets into a relationship and then works like a maniac so that he can be financially free one day and retire. And then there's the midlife kind of man who goes, oh, I'm so trapped by, work and family, and quits his job and leaves his family and goes walkabout. Um, so all of these are, kind of the classic stereotype examples of men searching for freedom, trying
mm,
to, like, I won't commit to the relationship, or I'll earn all this money and I'll make all this money and then I'll be free. It's like that sense that freedom exists somewhere else, or I'll be free when my wife stops complaining, or I'll be free when it's the weekend, or I'll be free when I have holidays. There's all these examples that freedom gets externalized.
mm. Yeah.
Any comments on any of that? I can see you
There-
laughing.
there's too many. I
Yeah.
don't know which one you want me to comment on, but it'll feel good for the man if his wife stops complaining, because that doesn't feel good, but he
Yeah.
won't feel free.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm guessing that's not exactly what you're asking either.
No, no, it's this sense of, yeah, like that freedom is, it's always somehow externalized. There's a sense
Yeah,
that when something changes, or if I don't do something, then I'll be free, or yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, like, that is always the perception,
Mm.
especially when we're seeking freedom externally.
Mm.
It's always, essentially, we're a victim in
Mm.
that state.
Mm-hmm.
If freedom lies somewhere else, then we're powerless, really.
Mm.
We need something to change in another, or in life, or work, or wherever, for that experience.
Mm.
But in life, it's really not how we learn.
Mm.
My experience is I learn through my opposites.
Mm.
So if I want to be free, then life's going to offer me situations where I constantly feel trapped until I can reconcile that
Mm.
experience.
Mhm.
And so freedom isn't having no pressures on our nervous system, having no constraints on our being, or however you want to word that. Being free is, if we're truly free, then everybody and everything around us is free. Free to be exactly as it is. Freedom isn't getting what I want. It's not having the situation I want or the money that I want, albeit it does feel like I can feel the part of me that thinks it does, even as I'm saying it. And freedom comes when we're free to allow life to be as it is. When we're not if I'm not in any kind of resistance to my life experience, then I'm free. If I don't need life to be different than it is, then I'm free. If I can allow life to be as it is, I'm free. If I can allow people to be as they are, I'm free. If I can allow my relationship to money to be as it is, then I'm free. And I'd buy more motorbikes. Dancing between myself and so the opposite is the experience of being trapped. Until I can actually feel trapped and no longer feel trapped.
To not identify with it, maybe.
Yeah, when I can relate to it as an experience of like, there's that sensation of pressure and feeling trapped rather than I'm trapped. Does that make the distinction?
Yeah.
When I can relate to it from that way, I'm no longer trapped. Because it's like, there's that sensation. It's so familiar. I know that. I'm perceiving myself as trapped right now. Oh, interesting. And it actually starts to become funny because, I always use the driving in the right lane example. But the reason I used to get so angry, I say used to, I still feel it come up in my body. I'm not free of it, but it doesn't bother me anymore. But it's essentially as a feeling of being trapped in that. I'm being held back from getting where I want to by someone's lack of presence because they're just mindlessly waffling, daydreaming in the right lane. But, if I stayed with that, then I would just suffer deeply. And so when I see that now, I feel the impulse come up and it's like, oh yeah, you're a race car driver, are you, Rod? You need to get somewhere fast. It's just like, it's like, hello, self, professional race car driver. How about you just like take a back seat? So then I'll literally I'll pull back several hundred meters and, in the past, I would bully them. Sit right up their ass and tailgate them. Get out of the way. If I was really young when I was 18, I'd be flashing the lights and beeping the horn. I was so impatient. But then when I move back a couple of hundred meters, my body just totally relaxes and I feel free. So then I've created that experience of freedom that I've wanted through my awareness. My awareness of the dynamics that are happening in the moment, how my body processes certain experiences, and the willingness to make a choice that's different that will actually create the experience I desire. So if I don't want to feel trapped, don't sit up that person's ass. Pull back. And then it's like, there's space around me. I'm not going as fast as I want, but there's still a sense, the sense of freedom or is present. The sense of being trapped drops away. But I'm empowered in that moment because I have a choice. But previously I wasn't, because I thought my only choice was that this other person needed to do something different. And so that belief in itself creates a deep sense of suffering.
And I love what you described there. There's a real sense of moving from being a victim of your experience to co-creating with life in your experience.
Exactly.
And feeling empowered and recognizing you can make that choice from victim to empowered and co-creating with life.
Yeah. And part of that requires me to let go of choosing from the place of what I want. I want this person to move because I want to get from A to B as fast as possible. So actually, I would choose that. I just want to feel that sense of spaciousness and take that pressure off my nervous system right now. And I'm just going to dial that back. And so those choices are always available in any moment. It's just finding them. But once I decide to make a different choice to what I'm making, I'm no longer fighting reality, because the reality is that person is there. My belief that they shouldn't be there is the thing that's creating the suffering in my body. It's not that they're doing the wrong thing. It's my belief that they should be doing something different. That creates the suffering. It's born from the belief. And so once I relax that belief, and it's like, well, actually, I believe that person can do whatever they like because they're totally allowed to.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, let that go and come
Mm.
back. So quite often, this feeling of being trapped is born, from a belief that life or the situation or the person should be different in some way,
Mm.
which is an expression of unlove.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
it's a condition that I'm placing on life in that moment, that
Mhm.
belief. And so what I've come to realize through this is that, when I feel, that victim type energy
Mhm.
arising in my body,
Mhm.
it informs me there's something I'm not seeing.
Mhm.
If I'm not feeling empowered, I don't feel like I've got a choice, I'm in that victim space, it tells me there's something about the situation that I haven't seen, that I'm not aware of. I'm not conscious in that moment of
Mhm.
something. And so then it invites me to inquire, okay, what is it that I can't see right now?
Mhm.
What do I need to choose differently to change this experience of life?
Mhm.
And so that's not an easy choice to make. Like,
Mhm.
even though I know that, I'll
Mhm.
still catch myself falling into victim, falling into a belief, feeling trapped, all this sort of stuff. Like, living this is very different to knowing it. They're
Mm.
not the same. Having
Mhm.
the awareness in my head is great, but can I live that awareness? Can I find the courage to make that choice? And quite often, the impulse in my body is that I don't want to.
Mhm.
It's like defiant child. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't want to do that. Why should I have to? So
Mhm.
there's this belief, that I shouldn't have to.
Mm.
And so then when I inquire on that belief, like, am I certain? It's like, no. And then it pops.
Yeah.
Something pops in the body when I inquire on the beliefs. And so that popping is the liberation of that perceived constraint in the moment.
Mm.
So once I inquire on the belief that's rooted, that's creating that suffering in that moment,
Mhm.
it pops and it all relaxes. It's
Mm.
like, okay, yeah, it
Mm.
just it kind of evaporates. It collapses in on itself.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
probably the best way to describe it. But it's an experience that you have to understand what I'm saying.
Mm. Mm. So let's take this experience around freedom into intimate relationship.
Mm.
So when a woman asks a man for time or to for him to do something, let's say around the house as a common example, how is that experienced by a man?
Fear, trepidation, trapped,
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And is there anything a woman can do to have it be received differently?
Not really.
Yeah.
Like, it, there is, like, if the person's really unconscious in
Hmm.
how they're asking, if there's like demand or
Mm.
neediness behind it,
Hmm.
then that adds to the pressure.
Yes.
So, like, the way you asked it was so calm and gentle and
Mm.
inviting that there's another experience to have in the moment.
Hmm.
I'm guessing that's not how it's delivered.
Hmm.
Like, you're very aware.
Hmm.
So you're very sensitive to a
Yes.
man's relationship to freedom. So I'm super lucky. But I already claimed her. So
So if a woman, one thing I hear and see commonly, and I know it can still happen for me at times, is feeling anxious about asking for something. And I know if I feel anxious about asking for something, then my heart closes and then demand creeps in.
yeah. So as soon as there's demand there,
Yeah.
it kind of like it doubles immediately the pressure.
Yes.
That's the feeling in my body. Is it just goes
Yeah.
exponentially through the roof.
Mm.
Um, and it depends like on the man and the people and all that sort of stuff. Like, I know for me, being single focused,
Mm-hmm.
I need time to reorientate my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in the middle of doing something and you're like, I need you to do this, it's like, okay, that's not going to work that well.
Mm.
So there's that sense of like, I need time to go just to reconcile the relationship between, for me, being purpose driven. If I'm in the middle of doing something,
Mm-hmm.
then there's this strong impulse and desire to finish it. Otherwise, I'm out of integrity.
Yes.
And now I'm being pulled in another direction and I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm not going to finish. So my experience of that is I'm a failure
Mm-hmm.
of a man if I don't complete what it is that I said that I'm going to do. But I'm also failing if I don't do whatever it is that you're asking or needing. So
Mm.
I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very hard for a lot of men to reconcile.
Mm.
So sometimes I'll say, yes, I can help you with that, but not right now.
Mm.
It depends what it is. Like
Yeah.
no has to be an option, because
Yes.
if no is not an option, it's not a question.
Yes.
it's
Yes.
a command. It's
Mm-hmm.
very different.
Mm.
So the like there's the only thing a woman can do is be really, understanding of her partner.
Mm.
How does he experience the world? What does he need? Like
Mm-hmm.
if what that person wants is so important to them, then having it completed in the best way possible is also important.
Mm.
So what choice does she need to make in that moment that's going to create that outcome that she desires? Because demanding or being needy, especially last minute, isn't it.
Mm. Mm.
And so there needs to be some awareness
Yes.
in the woman when she asks the man, for whatever it is that she wants.
Mm.
Like one of the ways I see you do it, you'll be like, babe, I need help with this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to have it done by Sunday. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's on a Monday or a Tuesday. That gives my nervous system heaps of space
Yes.
straight away. There's like 5 days or something
Mm.
to process that. It's like, okay, so what is it that you need? Now I can be curious. How do you need it?
Mm.
What does it need to be like when it's done? Like whatever the thing is.
Mm.
And so having some space around the thing that's required is very,
Yes.
very helpful. I think intimate wise, like the a woman's desire for love is usually expressed through the desire to connect,
Mm.
which requires the man to be there.
Mm-hmm.
That, in my experience as a man, feels like pressure.
Mm.
It feels like being trapped. It's like I have to go and do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and you can't expect women to just, oh no, I can't say that I want to connect and do stuff because, he's going to feel trapped, because she doesn't get to meet that desire in her own being for love connection. So the way that it gets reconciled is that we learn to love the differences between the two. Learn, like for me, learning to love and appreciate your desire for love connection, and seeing in you your desire to love the part of me that wants to be free.
Mm.
And so when we start to see that part of the other, that's the beginning of that dynamic dissolving.
Mm.
Because when we learn to love and honor the differences, it's inspirational.
Mm.
Like seeing you love me and my desire for freedom and to not wanting to put pressure on my nervous system inspires me to want to connect with you,
Mm.
because I can see how much you're putting into loving me exactly as I am.
Mm.
And it calls me to offer the same gift to you. So I
Mm.
know that if you want to go and do something, then okay, then I need to make that a priority. And when I do, life's exponentially better.
Mm.
And so that reward is the reward in itself.
Mm.
And then I start to relax my grip on the need for freedom, through the inquiry that we spoke about before, recognizing that, yeah, just, getting what I want, I won't feel free,
Mm.
but I won't feel any more trapped doing what you want either. And so there's this experience that I start to relate to both of those. So
Mm.
now I'm relating to my desire for freedom and relating to your desire for connection, and recognizing there's a balance for both.
Mm.
But then for me, the evolution of that is, and I know that's a big step,
Mm.
but there's more.
Mm.
And the more is that I get to enjoy my desire for freedom. It just, if I wanted to go for a motorbike ride, but you wanted to go for a walk on the beach, well, it's winter. You might be on your own. It's cold. But say you wanted to go for a walk on the beach, I could go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk on the beach with you, and I'm going to let go of going for a ride. Then I feel the part of me that just longs and yearns to go for a ride, and it aches,
Mhm.
and it's also kind of delicious.
Mm.
So I'll actually just enjoy the longing and the yearning for that. And I know that when I go for that ride, it'll actually be even better.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so there's a, there's no end to this
Yes.
kind of inquiry and exploration, but there's there's so much like, and it's not an easy practice to find the joy and the bliss and the love and the gratitude inside longing and yearning and
Mhm.
desire. But one of the best things about desire is desiring.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
like, I know, like, even sexually, I've had fantasies, and having it fulfilled is never as good as longing for it to
Mhm.
be fulfilled.
Mhm.
And so using that awareness to apply to other domains of life.
Mhm.
So I'll just feel that desire to go for a motorbike ride and be like, oh my God, that feels so, I can't wait for that moment when I
Mhm.
finally do. And the moment that I do, it's so much better
Mhm.
because I've danced with that longing. I've met your desire for connection, the relationship's flourishing and thriving. So then there's kind of beauty in all directions.
Mm.
So it's gone from a problem of like, I'm not getting what I want and I'm doing what you want. Yeah, we could look at it that way to, yeah, I'm going to let go of what I want, do what you want, and enjoy the longing for when I really get to go for that ride.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to uh, point out there, because this, in your case, when you make that choice to do something that's connecting with me, you're fully there, you're fully present, you're fully available for the experience with me. But if you
Yeah,
were
I'm not pissing and moaning about not going for a ride.
exactly, if you were there, if you were there begrudgingly or fantasizing about motorbike riding, that would be felt as disconnect. So I just wanted to pull
Oh,
that out too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm going off to do something with you, I
Yeah.
let go of all other
Mm.
things. And when I say let go of all other things, it means I take my attention off it. Even if my mind goes to it, which it
Mm.
will, it'll pull in that
Mm.
direction like a magnet. It's like it's natural for that to happen.
Mm.
And if I just let my brain run the show,
Mhm.
it'll just be a demanding child wanting what it wants all the time.
Mm.
So I notice that thought and go, yes, but what I'm doing is this right now, and we'll
Yes.
think about that later.
Mm.
And so I'll keep coming back to what I'm
Mm.
doing so that I am fully engaged. But I always find if I'm fully engaged in whatever I'm doing, whether it's with you or someone else, I actually enjoy whatever I'm doing.
Yes.
It's the quality of being present and available for life and the moment. Sorry, I'm trying to hold back a burp and talk.
Trapped.
Yeah, I was trapped. Yeah, I just outed myself.
In the moment.
Yeah. So if I'm not fully present with you, that it there's three things that we need to feel
Mm.
connection.
Mhm.
So presence, so eye contact, breath,
Mhm.
and an unguarded body. When I say breath, it's like breathing with our partner creates connection, but also an unguarded body, which means, not having our hands crossed or our arms crossed or hands across the genitals. There's an openness physically to, like, that's a physical description of the body. Like, we want to be unguarded. So in terms of, like, say, going for a walk down the beach with you, you know, the unguarded part, we might not be looking into each other's eyes because we'll be looking where we're going, which is probably a good idea. But
Bit
it's the
awkward to eye gaze and walk on a beach.
yeah, and even to try and align our breath.
Mm.
But I can be aware through my eyes and looking at you, looking at where we're going, be aware of my breath, and also be unguarded in how I'm being. And so, unguarded in how I'm being means I'm not carrying or bringing any resentment
Mhm.
for not going um, for the motorbike ride, or resentment for not doing what the other thing. Like, I totally, that what's part of what I mean by letting it go. Because if I'm walking on the beach for you and, I trip over a rock and it's like, oh God, I've stubbed my toe. I could have been out riding my motorbike, but I'm bloody here with you. Like, that kind of, yeah, toxic resentment type thing. Like, if I'm
Mm.
bringing that energy to the connection, you won't feel connected,
Mm.
and it won't touch that part of you that wants to feel the love between the two of us, which now means you'll be resenting me in the moment.
Mhm.
And your desire for connection's not met, which means it's still there
And I'll then become needy
and
for more
demanding.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I know if I don't show up, it won't touch that.
Mm.
And so then that escalates from there.
Mhm.
And what I see in relationships is an escalation. There's pressure over pressure, or trauma over trauma, over experience, resentment, just all getting piled on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a really tangled web. It's really
Yes.
hard to unravel. So,
Mm-hmm.
being present and available for connection is a really important part of touching that within a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that when I'm with you, I'm not thinking about other things, or where I could be, or work, or what I could be doing or
Mm-hmm.
achieving, or da 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 da. So I'm thinking about you, being here with you,
Mm-hmm.
connected, enjoying whatever the experience that life's presenting in
Yes.
that moment. And maybe not enjoying, but available
Mm.
for that experience.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to offer perhaps a few more examples for women who may be listening. And there was, I guess, one from yesterday where I came to you and said, I I need some help with planning around the garden and what's going to happen with the garden. Do you have some time today to support me with that? Because I knew you had some plans of things you wanted to do yesterday. So
Mm,
I came and I asked you if you had the available time to support me with that.
mm.
Can you say how that felt when I asked you for that time?
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
it was open ended. You asked me early in the morning.
yeah,
I think we'd either in bed or just got out of bed.
yeah.
You said, but you didn't, there was no demand or time. Can you do this by 9 or
Mm,
any of this sort of stuff? It's just like, can you help me with that today? And I was like, yeah.
mm,
And then at some point, I think I was cleaning or doing something on the car. You were doing something in the garden,
yeah.
and you asked me. I said, "You had your diary thing that you were doing, your garden diary," and I was just like, "Yeah, yeah, let's do it." So
Mm,
then we went through and mapped out
yeah,
what you wanted to do.
yeah. So,
So that there was, when you asked me, it's kind of like a it's like warning my nervous system. It's
mm,
priming my body for that. There's there's something that I would like, but
mm-hmm,
there's also no pressure attached to that.
mm,
So you're letting me know. And so that's how it lands in my body, is I know that there's something that you want sometime throughout the day.
mm-hmm,
I'm a yes for that, you know. And so then my body's sort of primed and ready for when that
mm,
request comes. Does that
mm-hmm.
make sense? So there's a real softness and gentleness to that
Mm.
specific scenario.
Yeah, so I guess that's what you mentioned before about there being a sense of invitation. It's a space that you can step into because I'm uh, inviting your support in.
Yeah, and in it's kind of what's been this month's topic, an intimacy
Mm,
oasis. It's masculine or alpha leadership and feminine or omega leadership. And you know, for the people that are listening, that may not be really clear exactly what that is, but feminine or omega style leadership is creating opportunities, leading with invitation.
mm,
Sorry, my voice is but that leading with an invitation is so beautiful
mm,
because it creates an opening, creates a possibility. And I think it gets missed in our culture so much because it's so soft and it's so gentle.
mm,
Whereas that alpha or masculine leadership's directive and has a quality of penetrating and pushing forward.
mm,
But feminine or omega leadership creates openings and possibilities and invitations.
mhm,
And so in that moment, it's a great example of that omega leadership, of creating that opening and that possibility, but there's no need or demand on it. So
mm,
then, because there's no need or demand on it, I naturally want to step into the opening. Does
mm,
that make sense? The impulse of me to create clarity and direction and leadership and to bring that to you is then there's an opening for that.
mm,
So, I feel the part of me that wants to help you, that wants to support you. It becomes alive because of the possibility and the openness of what you've expressed in your
mm.
desire and how you want. Does that make sense? There's
Yes,
no need
yes.
or demand or pressure. There's just a, I'd really love help with this. Like
Mm,
the vulnerability of creating an opening or an invitation is such a beautiful
mm,
gift. And, masculine men love that.
mm,
Because for me, there's a sense of purpose. It's like, oh, my woman needs my help.
mhm,
She wants me to support her. It's like it evokes that desire in me that wants to be there, that wants to
mm.
help out with things, or, the desire to fix is the desire in many ways to create structure,
Yes.
to create, flow or direction, clarity,
Mm,
leadership. Like it's, it that. that opportunity, it touches that part of me as a man that wants to do those things,
Mhm.
and it creates a healthy outlet for those.
Yes.
Like a woman's emotions is not the place to bring those
Mm.
qualities, but to the garden it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I had another example yesterday afternoon, which touches on what you just said of you're in the shed with a mate and me coming in going, I've done something silly. I've lost my shears in all the clippings that I have, and I really need some help to find them. And what was so beautiful is like watching both you and him like stride out of the shed and immediately set to the task of finding my shears, and click, there they were.
Yep.
So another example of that invitation, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
But then you have both of us out there looking
yeah,
for it. But as a man, there's that sense of like, ah, you want my help, you want my
yes,
input. It's like, yeah, I want to give that. Like
mm,
you're inviting something that's natural within me and giving it an outlet within the relationship.
mm,
And that feels liberating.
yes,
Like in terms of that man seeking of freedom, is like giving our gifts feels liberating. Like
mm,
being of support, being of service relates to purpose.
mm-hmm,
It's like there's always that question in man, like, what's the point of this? But
mm-hmm,
when there's a point to something,
mm-hmm,
it's like it just touches so deeply the part of, my being that wants to be of service, that wants to bring clarity and direction and leadership and those alpha or masculine qualities.
mm,
It invites those forward so they get
mm,
exercise those muscles
yes,
in the relationship, but in a healthy way.
beautiful. One of the other topics that's arisen is that within the sessions I've had over the last week is when a man says that he'll do something and then he forgets to do it.
Mm, wow.
Because I notice
That's a rabbit hole.
particularly when it comes to household things, women have a much greater tendency to see and hold what needs to happen, and men can quite easily forget even when he has said he'd do something.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
So can you speak to that situation?
I agree with it. I forget to do stuff around the house all the time.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to why men forget, or is it?
Perhaps why men forget, but then what women can do to remind, or
Okay.
yeah.
I think, like for me personally, well, I've got a brain injury. I'm not the right person to ask because I forget everything. I forgot that I bought a motorbike, so it. Or I forgot that I was buying one. Like
Mm,
it was, yeah. Like you asked me, are you
yeah.
excited about that? And I'm like, oh my god, I forgot I was doing that.
Mm,
Like I literally, I don't know that I'm the right person to speak
mm,
to this, but like things around the house in general, they often won't touch the man's sense of purpose.
mm,
They're not important.
mhm,
Like you'll notice that like single men often don't live to the same standard as single women. Some do. Like
mm,
I often did, but I
mm,
had a cleaner
mhm,
because I know that I won't clean the house
mm.
because there's no way in hell on my 2 free days, my days of freedom from my working week, that I'm going to spend cleaning the house.
Mm,
There is no way I'm doing that
mhm,
because that's just not important to me. Like if
mm,
the house is feral and filthy, then the house is feral and filthy, and I
mhm,
don't care. It matters for a woman because it doesn't feel good,
mm,
and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for lots of reasons, but
mm,
not feeling good doesn't matter as much to a man.
mhm,
Given, for the members of our community will understand this deeply, but the for women, they see and experience the world through how they feel.
mm,
So how the house looks, how the house feels, how clean it is or how clean it isn't, that has a huge impact on how they experience life, the quality of their feeling experience throughout the day, and how happy they are. All tethers to that feeling
mm.
experience. It's not the same for a man at all. So like I can have days where I don't have a feeling at all. It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's no priority to it.
Mm,
So when a woman, asks a man, can you clean this or do this? It's like, yeah. And there's like it just goes straight to the back of the list. Like I'll
mm,
get to that. But
mhm,
first I need to whatever's really purposeful and
mm,
important to him. And often that's not it.
mm,
And so like for men, being single focused, it it means, and then there can be lots of additions to that, like say like ADHD, something like that is like a hyper
Mm.
sense of focus. But that single focus, it's both a gift and a curse.
Mm.
Like pretty much like everything else in life, it's a double-edged sword. And I'll give an example of what I mean. If I'm doing something, my single focus means I only notice the thing that I'm doing. You could walk into the room and say something, and if I'm right into whatever I'm doing, I'm not even hearing it. I'm not registering it.
Mm.
It's just another noise.
Mhm.
Like, if I was focused on something, I'd ignore dogs barking or birds chirping or, people talking. Does that make sense? Or the television or the radio. That all gets, put to the background because I'm focused on what I'm doing. I'm not ignoring you, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, you could walk in and say something and I'll still not notice it.
So
because
it's all filtered out.
It's all filtered out because I'm narrowed the world down to this one thing that I'm doing in that moment. And so, and that can be really irritating for a woman who has wide attention and can do multiple things at once. And so I remember once, like this is back when I was a hairdresser, but there was I read this article, and scientists had discovered that when women multitask, there's actually a pathway that lights up on the right side of the brain when they multitask. Men don't actually have it. It doesn't exist. The pathway's not there.
Wow.
So it really is true that men can't multitask, not with any sense of authenticity. Sometimes they can do more than one thing at once, but they'll be doing both at 50%, say, or 60-40, or whatever the percentage is. It won't be 50-50, but you get the gist.
Yes.
Now, that single focus can seem like a problem, say, in that situation. But if you were making love with your man and his attention's only on you, only on your pleasure, he's only there with you in that moment, he's single focus, nothing else is distracting him, just you, how does that feel in your body?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So imagine then if the man was making love to you, but he was thinking about his motorbike and his friend down the road, and he was, organizing in his head this thing to do for work.
That's gross.
It's gross. Yeah. So you don't get one without the other. So if you want a man who's that present, then he's going to be so focused on, he's going to have the more alpha or masculine, the more present a man is, the more single focused in some ways he becomes. His awareness does widen, but how that expresses itself is different to when he's actually present. So when he's focused on something, that presence, that level of presence that he has, in many ways, it's a really potent capacity that he has in his body. And so he will naturally then forget to do a lot of stuff because he'll be so into whatever the thing is that he's doing. Even the more oriented or related to his purpose, something that's really important to his being, to his life, the more related it is to that, the more focused he'll be, the more other things will fall away. And so that thing for around the house is like right at the back of the list. And so it's quite often, it'll get to the end of the day and they'll be like, oh shit, I didn't do the thing. I don't know how many times I've had that thought or that experience.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. There's a massive difference between how life appears through a male body versus a woman's body.
Yeah.
And how we experience life and then how we live it is so different. Like I realized that when I was working as a hairdresser, is that, the only way I can describe it is that having spent so much time with women, I learned to understand how they see the world and how they experience the world. And that was, in many ways, it's one of my gifts, that understanding. I thought I was making women look beautiful, but I wasn't. I was studying and training. And it's the way I describe it to men is that, like, if they could see or experience the world through a woman's eyes and their body, they wouldn't even be seeing the same thing or having the same experience. It's completely different. And so we're back to that learning to love the differences. And so if the thing is really that important, the gentle reminders.
Mm,
It's like, it's like, how did you go with that? If you know he's going to forget because he's done it before,
mm-hmm.
and you want it done by the end of the day,
Yes.
you let him know in the morning or remind him, hey,
Mm.
I'd love it if that thing got done today. Oh yeah, cool. Like,
Mm.
I would love it if you did this. Is
Mm-hmm.
a great like question to ask a man, because
Yes.
a woman's happiness and her what she loves is actually important to a man
Mm.
and part of his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of tethers to that.
Mm.
And so I would love it. And um, you could check in then around lunchtime. Hey, how did you go with that thing? Have you had a chance to have a look at it yet? Oh, no, not yet. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
she's starting to get anxious or worried, it's like, okay, notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Ask again at 2, so there's still time to do whatever the thing is. And
Mm.
it's that, oh, I'd love it if we had that completed by today,
Yes.
just that gentle invitation and reminder. But,
Mm.
what's important to her will be important to him.
Mm-hmm.
That the house thing won't be important to him,
Mm.
but her desire. So it's reminding him of how important it is to her.
Yes.
That's what's valuable. Demanding that he do the thing is like the opposite. That
Yes.
triggers the relationship to freedom response.
Mm.
So the feeling
Mm-hmm.
trapped and whatever
Yeah.
his relationship to that is in his body.
Mm-hmm. So if a woman, again, it's having that sense of it being an invitation, being able to express with an open heart, being open-ended, so there is a possibility of no or yes, so that then
Yeah.
if I'm free and loving when I ask, then you will experience feeling free and loved
Yeah.
in the receiving the question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think the other piece is that, for men, when they fail to do something they said they're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a when, not an if.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship to that's really important.
Mm.
Excuses in many ways are a poison for men. And if you go down that path, then your woman can't trust you.
Yes.
And then what happens is you create more of this experience, because if she can't trust you, then she has to control you to get what she wants. And so that creates a really potent, destructive dynamic within the intimate relationship. So there needs to be, accountability for men around this. Like it's so important, for men to be trusted, because being trusted for men feels like being loved. Being trusted is more important than being loved. And so if we want to be trusted, then we need to be trustable. So excuses, there's no space for excuses, and that includes reasons. So, if I don't get something done, like say I didn't help you with the garden thing yesterday. If I said to you, oh yeah, but I was so busy, I was doing this and I was doing that, and I really didn't have time. Like, I just felt my balls shrink and my gut clench. I feel weak and worthless as a man. I don't know what your
My
experience
gut
of.
clenched. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel kind of gross. Whereas really, the only thing I need to say is, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I totally fucked that up. I'm sorry. I didn't get what you needed done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Then there's space.
No reason. Yeah. No excuse. No reason. Just I didn't do it and I'm sorry. So, I'm really careful in terms of committing to things that I can do. I think for men around this, if we don't want that kind of pressure from your woman and you want to be trusted, you need to learn to say no. Absolutely need to learn to say no, because if you asked me to do that and I knew that I had 10 things on that day and there was no way I was getting to it, and I said, yeah, I'll do my best to get to that. Can you feel how wet and flaky that was? I feel gross.
Well, in actual fact, there was another request I had, and when we spoke about that, which was the cleaning of the Weber,
I can feel my body going.
no, it's
I've
okay.
done something wrong.
You haven't done anything wrong. When we spoke about it, you said that's not going to work today. But when do you need it done by?
Yeah.
And I said by Friday.
Yeah, you needed it. Yeah, it needs to be done by Friday.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, because it was going to ruin whatever I was doing yesterday with the thing. But so in that situation, I said no to doing it then. but I said yes to getting it done by when you needed it done
Yeah.
by. So it's going
Yes.
to be done Thursday.
So there was that example of a request, you saying no, which
Yeah.
feels good to receive your no as well, because there's a clarity and directness in that.
Yeah.
And I want to say that for men, because sometimes I see men frightened to say no to their partners, but for me, it's a relief when you say no, because it actually makes you more trustable,
Yeah.
because there's that clarity and directness in your no,
Yeah.
but then also the openness of you going, when do you need it done by? So it's like, oh, okay, so you're still willing to do that thing. It's
Yeah.
just not today. Yeah.
Yeah. And the no is really important. And I would like to speak to that a little bit. And the no in some ways is a boundary.
Mm.
And just for clarity, boundaries are something that we impose on ourselves, not on another. If I'm imposing my boundary on someone else's behavior, that's control. So a boundary is something that I believe to be true and that I honor it. Not, I don't expect someone else to honor it. That's not a boundary. And so when I say no in that situation that Martina's referencing, the experience it creates in her nervous system, you check me if I'm not wrong, is safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You knowing how to say no. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. I first found this, like, I remember when my son was really young, like it wasn't even 2. And I'd said to my wife at the time, it's like, I need you to just like go out with the girls and hang out, go and do something you really want to do and, have fun. I said, I need to build this relationship with my son, like, but without you there. And she was like, yeah, I agree. Like that needs to happen. So she went off for the day and I stayed at home. Anyway, I thought, oh, I'm going to be the best dad. I'm going to let my son do whatever he wants.
nightmare.
Yeah. So he was a bawling mess within an hour. And when his mum got home, she lost her shit. Rightly so, because our son was this out of control, bawling, insecure mess. And so, like, we spoke about it, and it's like, oh, I need to do that differently. So the next weekend came about, and I'm like, come on off you go. She's like a bit nervous because what am I coming home to? And so what I'd done was the week before, I'd said, yeah, go out with the dogs, yeah, play with this, yeah, eat whenever you want. Like, I didn't give him crap. Like my wife, she was really like careful with his diet and no sugars and all this sort of stuff. She was really onto it. So I followed all that, but I'd let the boundaries sort of slip around what he could do and what he could not do. And so what had happened, what happened then, actually, I'll go to the next week. The next week, I maintained all our regular rules and boundaries that we had in place for his safety. So, like he couldn't go out and play with the dogs unless he put on his old clothes because there was a Newfoundland and a Saint Bernard is what we had. So he would come in covered in dirt and slobber and dog hair. And so, I had to say no several times. And at first he'd cry a little bit. And then within seconds, he'd just be happy and playing. And I realized, oh my God, kids need boundaries to feel safe, to feel secure, because then they know what they can do, what they can't do, and they feel safe within that. And then I was reflecting on that and I was like, hang on, adults, we need that as well. I was like, it's not a child requirement, it's a human requirement. And I was like, rightio. And I just thought, I need this for myself. It's like, I need to be consistent with my own boundaries so that I feel safe. And so the no, for a man in intimate relationship actually allows, like you said, a woman to feel safe. So she might be angry or frustrated, but that's not the measurement of whether you should say no or not. Avoiding conflict is not a reason to say yes to something you're a no for.
Yeah.
So the no is really important for safety, but it doesn't have to be brutal. Like if I had to just finish with, can you organize the barbecue? And I just said no. Okay. That feels off.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden the pressure of the barbecue
is on you.
is on me.
Yeah. But it's like, no, when would you like it done by? So the no is really important for safety. To be able to say, no, I can't do that today is really important for a man to be able to do. But there's also another experience that sort of happens in the shadows of that is that a woman will, or you tell me if this is true or not, but a woman will feel her man's strength in that.
Mm,
And it's
mm,
a quality women desire in men is strength, because
mm,
it's a quality of consciousness, or masculine or alpha quality in our work is strength. Power is the equivalent in the feminine or omega. Like masculine doesn't have any power,
mm,
but omega or feminine is full of power.
mm,
But in an intimate relationship, a woman wants to feel her man being strong. So he can be strong mentally or with other people, but she wants to feel it. Which, if I can't say no to her, she doesn't get to feel my strength. In some ways, the only way, like if there's a massive tree outside and we want to know it's strong, we usually will go up and like press on it or push it or touch it or do something. It's like, does it move when I do this? And so that plays out in intimate
mm,
relationship energetically, emotionally. It's like, oh, if I ask this and he says no, that's like pushing on the tree. She feels that he's not moving on this.
mm,
It's like, no, she feels the strength. So our no is important, like right across the relationship, for safety, for strength, and for her to experience that alpha or masculine quality that resides within us that she longs for and craves, because I desire to feel her power.
mm,
She desires to feel my strength. That's my gift to her is my strength. Her gift to me is her power.
mm. Yeah.
And it plays out, like we talked before, through the opposites.
Mm,
We'll desire what we don't have and will crave or want that. So in intimate dynamic, I experience that through her and receive it. She experiences strength through me.
mm, mm. And when when a man doesn't know how to say no, it can have that pleasing quality to it, which means his energy will be spread thin. So then that capacity for presence and single focus is gone because his capacity is spread thin.
Gets diluted.
But also, if a man doesn't know how to say no in his intimate relationship, he also won't know how to say no in the other areas of life, which will also impact the relationship.
Yeah, like one of the things I see is how busy men
Mm,
are.
mm,
But in many ways, to me, like being overly busy is a lack of capacity for boundaries,
yes.
an inability to say no,
Mm,
a desire to please people. But all those things create weakness in men,
yes.
or the experience. They'll
Mm,
feel weak when they're overly busy, or whereas in that desire for freedom, busy is the opposite
mm,
of freedom. If a man's feeling trapped, check your boundaries. Like,
yeah.
what are you saying yes to that's not a priority? Because I know for me, if I'm too busy, which I'm not, but if I'm too busy, I experience it as pressure
Mm,
and then I feel trapped.
yeah.
And so our culture encourages people to be busy.
Mm,
Like when I was a kid, I used to play football, or I did karate, or I played tennis. Like there were
mm,
seasonal sports, whereas I hear friends talking, their kids are doing martial arts, football, surfing, and basketball,
and music.
and music, and
Mm,
it's like it's the kids are being trained to be
mm,
so busy, but for those kids when they grow up to become, if they're boys and they grow up to become men, they're being trained from the get go to be busy.
mm,
They haven't learned to actually be quiet and to be still and to slow down and create that sense of spaciousness and freedom internally in their
mm,
life. So, relationship to boundaries is really important.
mm,
And anything I say yes to that's not a priority means that everything that is important now gets less attention.
mm,
It suffers because of it. When I was younger, I used to race motorbikes,
mm,
which I loved. I'm not fast anymore,
mm,
but
mm,
I just like to ride. But I was reading this book about motorbike riding, and I was doing a course at the same time. It was by a guy called Keith Code, and in there he was talking about attention. So in motorcycle racing, like they have lots of reference points on a track. Like they did this experiment with Valentino Rossi. If you got, they put him in a chair, blindfolded him, closed his eyes. They got a stopwatch, and they said they got him to go around the track in his mind, and he was within like tenth of a second of that time just sitting there in the chair that he would actually do on the track.
Okay, wow.
And the reason, and he could do that over and over and over, and
Mm.
any of the great racers can, but the reason they can is because they have reference points. Now, so I'll give you an example. If I was coming, say, at Phillip Island into turn one, you're doing 290 or something kilometers an hour. I need to know where it is I'm going to brake, where it is I'm actually going to turn, where my vanishing point is, where my exit point is, and where my entry point to the next turn is. So I need to have my attention on all these things to get through the corner as fast as possible. So what they describe, that attention is like a $10 note. Once you've spent your $10, there's nothing left. So if you're going down Phillip Island Main Straight and you're looking at the water and the beautiful view and the people around the track, and then all of a sudden at 290 kilometers an hour, you're moving something like several hundred meters a second, straight off the track, because your attention's on things that aren't important, which means you're not paying attention to the things that are important. And so in life, it's the same. If a man's attention is spread thin, if I spend, say I was trying to run the country, but I wanted to go motorbike riding and I was a gamer and I was doing all these other stuff, then, if I've got attention on all these other things, say I've got $2 of attention on riding and $2 of attention on gaming, and say I'm a surfer as well and I've got $2 of attention on that, I've got $4 left to run the country. Everywhere we place our attention that's not important, not a part of our purpose, our priority, our relationship, or cultivating the life that we want to live, it's taking something away from those qualities, from every little area of life where we place attention that's not a priority. Every other area gets impacted. We usually can't see it. We'll feel that that's not true. But when you make the adjustment, you realize, wow, I could actually have done this so much quicker, more effectively, or created something even greater if I'd placed all of my attention on it rather than spreading my attention so thin. So when men are busy, every part of their life is suffering their lack of capacity to say no. Every part of their intimate relationship, their children, their work, their career, their purpose, whatever, it all suffers when they can't say no and keep their attention just on the things that are important. Once you've spent your $10, you're done.
Yeah. So that sense of knowing your priorities is so important, side by side with that capacity to say no.
Yeah, because if you don't keep coming back to that, then everything suffers, but then that feeling of being trapped comes online because everything's failing.
Yes.
So now everything needs more attention and there's no attention left to give.
Yes.
Now we're suffering deeply.
Yeah. And there's a few things I wanted to offer for women just as awareness. Like one thing I'll often say with women clients is like the random sock on the bedroom floor. So women will experience the random sock.
I'm going to check the floor after this.
No, we don't have one there. But let's say a man's sock is on the bedroom floor. When a woman walks past it, it can feel like the sock is screaming at her. It's like the sock's like, pick me up, pick me up, pick me up. And so a woman feels that sock kind of like screaming at her. A man walks by, what sock? What sock? Because whatever he's doing in that moment, whether he's like, I'm on my way to bed or I'm on my way to the ensuite to the bathroom, whatever his attention is, wherever he's going, that's his single focus. He's doing the thing. Like there is no floor, there is no sock. Whereas that sock can scream, pick me up at a woman 10 times and she's going, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the sock. He doesn't care. And then it turns into he doesn't care about how I feel. He's disrespecting me because he's not picking up the sock. He thinks I should pick up the sock. It can turn into like a really big thing for a woman. But the truth is the man didn't even see the sock. No. And so I share this with clients just to have that awareness that like women, and you mentioned this, women have that wide sense of awareness in comparison to the man's single focus. And if we look at our DNA, hunter-gatherer society, man as a hunter, you absolutely have to be single focus if you're going into battle with the neighboring tribe. You absolutely have to be single focused if you're hunting the bear. So primarily in men's DNA, it's set up to be single focus because of, those things are life or death. Single focus is required, whereas for a woman, it's like, caring for the children and preparing some meals, and I'm gathering nuts and berries and this and that. Our DNA is geared to hold many things at once. So it's a very, very different experience. And it's good for women to understand that, coming back to understanding and loving the differences. Because when a man, if he doesn't do something or if he forgets to do something, it's not because he doesn't love us, because Rod has the worst memory ever. And so if I thought that he didn't love me every time he forgets something, I'd be a wreck.
Yes, you would be.
So it's also to understand it's like, he's going to need a reminder. And there are times when Rod also, he takes responsibility for his reminders. Like he has a reminder in his phone that Tuesday night is rubbish night, things like that. So it's not always that I have to remind Rod. There'll be things that he does to stay accountable for certain things too.
I have a lot of alarms set on my phone. Yeah. I think too, in terms like of the biological evolution of humans, and that's happened over millions of years, in that hunting mode, part of that single focus is men have trained, or their organism has been trained to notice things that move, to look for danger in other animals. They don't notice things that are still.
Yes.
And so in that hunter sort of mode, if something moves, I notice it. If we're out for a walk, I'll see the tiniest little lizard out of the corner of my eye move, and it's like, is that a snake? Like, being that we're Australian, snakes are everywhere. And so like there's
And
this
I don't see it.
Nah, like there was that big black snake that day. I'm like, oh, check out that thing sunning itself. And you're like, where is it? I'm like, right over there. Like just in front of us. And so I'll notice anything if it moves. If it's my car keys, I can never find them, even if we're the same place. I put them all the time. But if it moves, I'll notice it. If it's still, you'll notice it.
Yes.
Yeah. So like the sock on the bedroom floor, it's not moving. So it's really common for a man to not notice things that are still. He'll notice things that move. If the stuff in the fridge moved, I'd be able to find it.
I did something fun in a past relationship where I incentivized that partner to pick up the coins out of his pockets or off the floor, because it was like, if it ends up in the washing machine or if it's on the floor, it's mine. And we both had money jars beside our bed. My money jar was full first. But then after him losing that much money, he's like, started picking them up.
Really?
Yeah.
You just keep mine. We need jars. That bloke was lucky. He got a chance. No, I figure I deserve to lose it if I've left it there.
Yeah, but we don't actually have that much cash at our house, whereas back then people still used cash more.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it's worth noticing or knowing those things, because it really is true. Like I can be sitting in the evening watching television for you, and I'll catch something move on the balcony out of the corner of my eye. Like I'll notice it straight away. But that if something's moving, I'll see it, I'll find it.
Yeah. And so it's important for women to not take these things personally, like the man's quest for freedom, the man forgetting things. It's like when we understand these things and we don't turn them into, he doesn't love me, because it's not actually a measure of his love. It's not a measure of how he feels about the relationship. It's actually to understand who he is and where he's coming from, and then to be able to meet and appreciate him in that as well.
Yeah, it's a byproduct of his biology. The organism of humanity has been evolving over millions of years, and you can't take that out.
Yeah.
It has an impact on, and there's so many layers to our humanity. Like there's the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the part of us that's aware.
Yes.
And it's which you can notice. Like, can you notice you're having a thought? You can, but what's the part of you that's noticing that? And so biologically and physically, that's an aspect. But we're also then have that create certain feelings within the body, which create certain thoughts, and we can be aware of all that. But all that makes up who we are. And there's another part of us that's aware of all that. If we can rest into that part that's aware, we can start to notice these relationships that are happening inside of our body through our feelings and our thoughts and our physical sensation, and also notice that that's not us.
Yes.
There's more to it. But I think when we're obsessed or only aware of certain aspects of our humanity, it limits our experience and our perception, and we'll perceive, he didn't pick up the sock, he doesn't love me. Because we're only noticing that he didn't do this physical action, and there's this emotional response in my body of how that feels. But it only feels that way because we believe that he doesn't love me because he didn't pick up the sock.
Yeah.
Whereas if we realize he didn't pick up the sock because he didn't see it, it's got nothing to do with his love.
Yes.
Then that belief not being there doesn't create that suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we come back to being a team in relationship when we understand each other, allow space for our own feelings. It's like, it's okay if we feel hurt or disappointed or upset, but can we feel that without dumping or projecting it onto our partner? So we stay team oriented, like that we're in this together, and knowing that if I have Rod's best interests at heart, then that makes it easy for Rod to have my best interests at heart.
Yeah. And then it becomes what we call a co-creation of love.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, that feels like a beautiful place to finish for today.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you for listening and watching, and let us know if you have any questions or comments.
See you next time.